Claire, the program is nice. WKCR should have more programs like it. This is, of course, WKCR FM in New York, 89.9 on the dial. I'm Stefan Zucker. My guests are two record pirates, Ralph and Tom Ferrandina. Together, they own the Legendary Recordings and Parnassus record labels. And Ralph is known as Mr. Tape and sells audio and videotapes, cassettes, open reel tapes, and video cassettes. Ed Shapiro called in to say, I'm enjoying the show. I've been buying Legendary Recordings for years. The Raimi operatic Villains is really good. The records get better and better. Your show, Stefan, should be heard twice a week.
Well, that's nice, isn't it?
Yes, many thanks.
Well, I got kind of hooked on your show myself. I have to get home at least by 10:30 on Saturday to listen to it.
Tom Ferrandina, how will the industry fare in the post Caballé era? Caballé is currently singing, and she's a great favorite among listeners. She won our contest for favorite soprano of the present day, but it's widely known that she's had 10 operations. She won't continue forever.
Well, Stefan, Ralph can answer that better than I could, but I'll say one thing is that she's the last of the great divas, and to pinpoint someone coming up to take her place right now, I don't know, Ralph, could you think of someone?
Well, there are some people that I do like, and I put out records by them that are very good, but I think that Caballé is the last of the great divas. As far as the old tradition of what I think divas is, and what a diva is.
Were you selling more records 4 or 5 years ago, Tom?
Absolutely.
Why is that?
Many things. There
CDs,
are
cassettes.
CDs. There are the influx of the European labels.
More other labels.
When we came into business, there were just MRF and there was Voce.
Which is starting.
Of course, you had the Club 99, the OASI putting out, the 78 renditions of the older singers. But the influx of the European stuff, especially with the dollar value fluctuating, coming into this country at a very, very cheap price, and the American consumer, for some reason, thinks they're getting something extra when they get a European product, and they've, had focused a lot of their buying on that.
About 5 years ago, Italian law changed, placing recordings of performances more than 20 years old in the public domain. A spate of Italian record labels sprang up and quickly issued recordings of virtually every important performance from 1950 to 1965. The discs are widely available here. I counted recordings of the Callus RAI Norma are on 8 competing labels.
Yeah.
I think in the past, the Pirates focused on that market, performances from the 50s. But today, are you driven to put out records made from tapes that are younger than 20 years to avoid the Italian competition?
Well, we put out both, older and new. We put out some things that are within a year old. And we just basically do what we like.
Well, I know that you put out some almost forgotten singers, finding them new publics.
Oh, like
Rethberg.
You mean on a Parnassus label, Connolly, Eugene Connolly, Jobin. Well, as you know, tenors like yourself are always the tenors are just rare to begin with. We always have a lot of baritones and things like that, but tenors, good ones, are rare. And Connolly, I think Eugene Connolly, who had a very good, distinguished career at the time, in the 50s and 40s. I think if he was around today, he would be 10 times more popular than he was. I always think that the tenors that we had in the 40s and 50s, if they were around today, because we have we have very few tenors that are really good. We have a few, but that's it. I think a tenor like Daniele Barioni, who was absolutely nothing special at the time, would be considered a very good tenor today. A great tenor, maybe.
Is the European market more difficult for you, not just because of the dollar, but because of a crackdown in Austria and Germany on importers? Austria and Germany, I think, buy more classical records than any other countries.
Well, there are sometimes some of the copyright laws in Germany and Austria are different from here. Certain things that are in public domain in this country, not in public domain in Austria and Germany. And that just passed, I believe, a few months ago. So that has added to the difficulty in some of the sales from Europe.
The big pirate importer, his name is escaping me just at the moment.
Grunhaber
was raided and briefly jailed.
Not
that much. I think he just some of the records were just investigated more, and they weren't any of our.
No, there was some of the
there.
German stuff that had come out on Melodram that had not cleared. I know there was a Getter record that came out, and some things that he did not get permission from the opera house nor from some of the artists, and it was blown out of proportion. And
like everything else is. I mean, this is just so exciting when this kind of news breaks out among the 3,000 opera lovers in the country.
It was something that was just, really blown out of proportion. And some of the Strauss things, which are in copyright in the U.S., were not in copyright there. So what it ended up was he had to pay, I think, a 25 cents to a 75-cent fee on any recording, whether private or commercially, imported into Austria or Germany. So that had nothing, it was focused at Legendary Recordings or any of the private, it was anything coming in.
In short, Melodram, Foyer, and other Italian labels are not legal in Germany and count as pirates.
Exactly.
There?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, I feel from hosting this show that the opera fanatic public is profoundly dissatisfied with the singers of the last 2 decades, finding them bland. Is the public disinclined to buy album after album starring any one singer today, other perhaps than Caballé? Callas has always, I know, sold well on private labels, but is there any one star of whom you can do many records?
Well, there are a few. There's one that we have put out, 4 single records, which is really something, by Eva Marton, and she's the only one of the new generation that we have given so much attention to, because she's good and she's exciting, and commercially she wasn't recording much in the last 10 years, except for the last year or so. There's been some things out, I think, on CBS.
Are there unknown singers you're championing?
Let me see. Unknown. No, I don't think so. I mean, unknown that if I would have put them. There are many unknown singers that I have in my tape catalog that people don't even know, and they may be the biggest stars in 5 years, but if they're so remote, we don't put them out on disc yet. They have to be at least famous in Frankfurt or someplace. Like Marton, I used to live in Europe and Germany. I heard Marton sing all the great roles that she doesn't even touch anymore, 12, 13 years ago. And I knew she would be a big success. That's why I had all those tapes.
Shall we go on to another record?
Right.
We will be getting to such things as artists who don't like being pirated. There are some. But for now, shall we turn to...
Okay, now we're going to play... When we started the business years ago, there are so many favorites, but this artist did not record much at the time, and we dedicated our first release to the great Leonie Rysanek, and who's been a great favorite of mine, and who also approves of these things, and who's been a very nice person, her and her husband. And we're going to play excerpts from a live performance of La Gioconda from Berlin.
Has Rysanek supplied you with tapes?
No, I supply her.
Who is on the Gioconda?
It's basically her, and it's a little scene from Act 1, and the duet from Act 2 to the end of Act 2, and the aria from Act 4, Suicidio. And
When
It's
did
Franco Tagliavini, Robert Kearns, and Franca Matucci.
Martucci, or is that the right name?
Right.
Let's see. Mattiucci.
Yes, that's right. It sounds. She sang a lot in Berlin at the time. Anyway, I think Leonie Rysanek. I could say much about her, but I think she is a very exciting singer in the German repertoire, but also in the Italian repertoire. And I think her Gioconda is one of the best. And I'm so sorry she never got the opportunity to sing it here in New York. I was in Berlin and I taped these performances myself. She was great.
Are you still your own trigger man? Do you do your own hits?
No, not anymore.
No.
Too busy.
Do you have people go and do that for
Mostly
you?
people just send me things always, just as gifts and things. And
do you mostly put out European-made tapes because
both.
of both?
Yeah. Europeans tend to do better broadcasting on the radio than we do here. For some reason, the quality of the broadcasts here every Saturday have gotten worse. I shouldn't say the last years or so they've been a little better, but in the 70s, I have broadcasts from the 40s that sound better.
Mostly people think that the quality of WKCR has improved owing to the move to a new transmitter. You're not speaking of this station,
No. I'm talking about... I just don't understand why they can't just simply put 2 or 3 simple mics right on stage and just simply record it. Everyone has to be a diva today, or a divo, in the recording booths, I guess, and just overcomplicate things.
It sounds over-manipulated.
Yes, it's just record the goddamn thing.
Too much phase distortion. Phase distortion, like with RCA. The same
right, just
point.
put a damn mic there and record the damn thing.
Run.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I'll think of the point later. When was the Gioconda recorded?
That was recorded live in...
The Ferrandina brothers are providing a great service, but CDs set the standards. 30 years ago, the Ferrandinas would have been issuing 78s. The pirates should get their act together and put out CDs. The Met's broadcast standards are horrible. How about Barbra Streisand? There should be more pirates of her. Well, he's made
right,
several...
wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, Barbra Streisand pirates, and we'll all be in jail.
That, in short, is the kind of thing that you stay away from for legal reasons?
Well, pop, I like pop to play at home, but not to pirate.
Usually, most of the people who buy these type of recordings don't look to find people like Pavarotti or some of the very well-known singers, whether they'd be operatic or pop or semi. They're looking for the singer who is unrepresented, usually on other labels.
Or poorly represented on commercial records. Barbra Streisand, for example, records every one of her songs is commercially available in great sound. Why would anyone want a recording of it on a cassette, a pirated cassette or something?
I have a personal message from Mr. Caputo with respect to CDs. Sir, hold out something from your body, a limb or a part of your body, with
get it chopped off
with an LP, and clock how long you can comfortably hold out your arm or whatever. Do the same exact thing with the same music with a CD and see whether you can keep going as long. CDs are psychoacoustically jarring, and the effects are profound and at this time inadequately understood. Now, a paper was presented at the Audio Engineering Society about CDs a few years ago regarding the fact that at mental institutions it was noted that whereas music ordinarily calms the inmates, certain records made them agitated and crazy. And it was found that the records all had the same thing in common. They were digital. This one theoretician at the Audio Engineering Society, after some tests, concluded that yes, digital is bad for the health. there are many people who hold that. In Opus magazine, there was a very detailed, thoughtful attack on digital a few months back. A rebuttal, yes, but I think one can say that digital is distressing, and somehow there is a grainy, off-putting undercurrent to the sound with vocal records. So I think CDs are profound error. One that troubles me greatly is something in the record business. I do freelance recording. A lot of people doing that hate digital, but have taken it up because of the trend. I think I'd go into another field. Cantor Don Goldberg phoned to say, the Björling family has private recordings. Will you bring out unheard Björling, Ralph Ferrandina?
Well, we're working on some things which I'm not at liberty to talk about.
Now, I asked the same question of Lars Björling when he was a guest on the show last March, and he said that the family has nothing not already out.
I would say probably that's true, but there are, I'm sure, a few things that, Björling has so many things recorded that I'm sure carefully going through what they have, we'll be able to come up with a few things.
There will be a Björling coming out on the OASI label within the next 6 to 8 months, because Bill Violi has informed me he has gotten some very rare Björling tapes that have never been out before.
And
it's hard to believe, but...
And we'll be putting out another Björling on our Parnassus in the next year.
Michael Wolfson called in to say in Chicago in the 50s, there were such things as a Björling, Tebaldi, Gobi, Tosca. Does anyone have tapes of that kind of thing, Mr. Tape?
Nope.
James de Pisa of Norwalk said, I have some legendary recordings albums, including a delmonical Walküre. Commercial companies never put out its equal. Likewise, Tebaldi Corelli album and the Bastianini albums. I like the LR pressings, but I'm buying more Club 99s and Prizers because I prefer the old singers. Still, live performances are best.
Well, we love the OASI label ourselves, and I personally have the entire line in my own personal collection. It's just that it's so well represented by Bill Violi's work that why try to copy something that's already being so well handled?
Alan Herman called to declare, Rysanek is fabulous, one of my favorites. It's high time, Stefan, that you highlighted her just as you did or do with Olivero and Callas. You don't hear Gioconda sung this well or with this much passion at the Met, even if Italian purists say Rysanek is un-Italianate. Not even Eva Marton is this exciting. Rysanek has more style than most Italians today. The singers coming up don't compare. Rysanek's Aida on legendary recordings is by far the most sumptuous on disc. Where you were born doesn't matter, your brains count. So declared Alan Herman.
Well, that's great. I like that comment. One more thing I just want to say about the comment before that about the older records of OASI. We do distribute that line.
The exclusive distributors of OASI and Club 99.
So we carry the line, even though we don't make it ourselves.
We don't make it because,
we're
as
the
Ralph
only
said, they're variously represented on their own labels.
George Cardinal called to ask, why do artists, particularly Callas, sound better on Pirates?
Because when you're on stage and you're a singer like Callas, I think you're more free when singing live than being constricted in a little studio with a mic shoved right under your mouth. I mean, people don't perform that well when they're told to on command, but with an audience there and acting and the whole thing of being on stage, I think you're so... Callas was bigger than life. I mean, she couldn't be confined to a microphone in a studio. And although her records are very good, her commercial ones, her private ones are much better.
Today, the commercial companies, RCA is the worst offender, largely, as mentioned earlier, record with many microphones and a great deal of post-production processing. Their latest efforts are digital. The multi-mics tend to introduce phasing problems with arrival times, incompatibility of arrival times with different signals. The Pirates record with 2 microphones. The equipment is not as good, but the approach is more faithful to the sound of a given voice or instrument in a given acoustic space. Gino Mariani called. Is there no call for Petrella, Caniglia, Bruna Rasa, and Favero? There's no decent rondine on disc. Why don't you put it out on disc? Or are you caught up in the good sound vogue? He has in mind in particular an Albanese performance.
Well, I have an
rondine.
Albanese rondine, and I would love to put it out, except the sound is really not that good, and it's just a little bit below standard in sound quality. As I would love to put it out because I think Licha should be, all her great operas should be put out on disc, especially the Puccini ones, Tosca, Rondine, Tabarro.
Now, Gino Mariani continued, what about now unavailable RAI performances and the material Edward J. Smith once had out, such as Bruna Rasa, Melandri, and Mascagni in Cavalleria? We played that here a year ago. Also the Delmonico, Petrella, Otello, and Adriana. Mariani answered,
we put out the Petrella duet on our Delmonico record, but there's just so much to put out, and we just have a list of so much more we have to do in the future, and unfortunately Petrella and Caniglia are not among them yet. But I adore them and I like them very much as singers.
And some of the Eddie Smith things that were out earlier were in abominable sound, and
yes.
I guess if we maybe could have gotten some better
copies.
tapes or better copies.
If there was a good copy of the Adriana with Petrella and Delmonico from Mexico, we would have loved to put it out, but the sound is just not good enough to put out complete. We put out a little excerpt.
You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. The collectors
That's right.
want it, but if you put it out in bad
and they condemn
sound...
the sound, and they...
Right, and then the other thing too, as much as I like Petrella, I don't know how well she would sell.
Well, there are 2 extremes. Rodriguez of BJR and Robin Hood used to put out, he stopped issuing records now and is slowly liquidating his stock of records, but he used to put out records made only from good sounding tapes. If he had an exciting performance in poor sound, he'd forego putting it out to preserve the company's reputation for good sound, and he'd forego the sales. At the opposite extreme, there are pirates who will put out anything regardless of the sound, which they feel will be of sufficient interest.
Well, okay. To do that would be to limit our company to be putting out, as Rodriguez did, 25 to 35 releases over the course of 21 or 22 years. And we feel that there's a demand for this type of product. And although we try always to get the best sound, we do sometimes think things must be put out, and we do put them out. And if we were to follow that route, Legendary Recordings would have maybe 15 or 20 things out instead of 140. But as compared to other companies, some of the other companies, we just don't get any old tape, and if it's in disgusting sound, put it out because we feel it would sell. We're basically interested in things that sound fairly well and things that we feel the public does want.
Gino Mariani asks further, what of the Callis, Valkyra, and Tristan?
If we had those, we could retire and take you on a world cruise with us.
Gino does love the records you have out now.
Well, thank you.
But some people are not in love with what you do, Ralph and Tom Ferrandina.
They're not? Who could that be?
We were discussing that and really we could not come up with
Well,
one or
there
two
must be
names.
some
I'm sure
people.
there are a few, but
have you ever been sued?
never.
I see.
I've been asked to take a couple of things out of print, which we did, but we have never actually been sued, no.
Wasn't there conflict between you and Polygram, the world's biggest record conglomerate?
There was a conflict over a recording featuring Pavarotti, who was an exclusive at Polygram, which we did not know about. And we put out two recordings that did feature him, but were basically put out for the other singers. And Polygram felt that was misleading their audience, people who were buying, Pavarotti
Which we could
records.
understand if that's
Which
what
we
they
really
want.
could understand, and we apologized. And all we had to do was give a recall and take all the records out of print.
You had put out a ballo and a bohème
Right.
without realizing that Pavarotti had signed an
An
exclusive
exclusive. That means they
recording
own everything
contract.
Pavarotti does, whether it's T-shirts or whether it's records or whether it's personal appearances. They have that exclusive contract where you would get a singer like Domingo or Carerras, where they may record for RCA one day and they may record for CBS the next. With Pavarotti, it's not like that, and we didn't know that, and it was a mistake on our part.
Did you have to pay Polygram a settlement?
No,
You simply deleted the
deleted
albums.
the product.
It's usually done very amicably.
You press a few hundred copies at a time so that
I would say anyone who has those two recordings, you have two of the rarest things.
Right,
Because
I'm
there
sure
were only
they're worth a lot
200 and
now.
some odd pressed, and 100 and I think 40 or 50 came back. So
and so your big loss was not so much with the pressings but with the one-time costs.
yeah,
Making the cover, all the rest of it. Well, what of the second oboist, the clarinetist? Do you ever hear from them? Do they hassle
I
you?
always hear that they usually are the ones that are very upset, but so far we haven't, heard of anything really against us. It's so ridiculous anyway. I mean, if the singers like it, how could a violinist, the third violinist or something, you can't even hear them.
So far as I'm aware, there are no legal precedents regarding your kind of piracy. Earlier, we drew a distinction between what Ralph and Tom Ferrandina do, putting out tapes made from in the opera house or over-the-air performances, and what some companies have done in the pop field, simulating the albums of major labels and marketing them as if they were those major label albums, copying the discs and making lookalikes. Those companies unmistakably have the law against them.
Right. It's like
and have
counterfeing
been
money.
sued.
that's
It's
actually
like
counterfeit piracy.
counterfeiting money, you know what I mean? It's like taking a dollar bill and having a counterfeit one. Just
Well,
like-
Did the case with Polygram get into court?
no.
Never.
No.
Wasn't even filed.
What did they do exactly?
It was just dismissed.
Wait, if it was dismissed, I'm no lawyer, but I would think that that would mean that it had been filed.
No, it was what was it you called that? Filed. Oh, it was a letter to show cause. That's what it was. It wasn't a file. It was not an index number. And what it was to answer were these records put out by our company, which they were, and to tell us that Luciano Pavarotti was an exclusive artist with Polygram, and they owned all rights. And they felt that their artist was not being best represented, and we did not get their okay. Because sometimes when you see an artist on another label, you say, by permission from the other company. And that didn't exist. And we had to give a recall, and by a certain date had to turn in all the records to Polygram, and that ended it.
I know of two other disputes of this kind. Philips Records, a member of the Polygram conglomerate, sued the the store, this chain, Tower Records, because Tower was a dealer for an HRE Jessye Norman recital album. The suit was settled out of court, with HRE reportedly reimbursing Tower's expenses and continuing to sell the album through the mail. A similar suit by Giorgio Tozzi against Tower over an MRF Ugonotti also, according to what I've ascertained, resulted in an out-of-court settlement.
Well, with that, I'm sure that's the case there. We haven't ever done anything on legendary recordings with Jessye Norman or Tozzi, and so we didn't. I'm sure we would have ran into similar problems. Again,
to my knowledge, classical live performance piracy has no legal precedence, unlike pop piracy, with the exception of some of the more legally sensitive releases, including most bootlegs of the Met. Classical pirates are openly available in about 25, maybe more, U.S. record stores.
Oh, more.
Well,
how many?
I would say about 60% of all record stores in the United States.
There are little ones that you may have not heard of.
Wait, there are upwards of 15,000 record stores, most of which sell rock or MOR.
Okay, maybe I would say at
not
least
60%, but we have more than 25 across the country.
How many stores do you have?
Oh, I just off the top of my head,
150.
As many as that?
Yeah, but some of them are little stores that just carry maybe
onesies and twosies once a year.
Ones or twos of things that they like.
When you couldn't offer them Pavarotti, did they lose interest?
No.
Yeah.
I'm nothing against Pavarotti, but like I said, he's an artist that's so well recorded on commercial records that although we have some interesting things and we put out 2 things, it's not something that we really care about because we really like to do people like Ziani and
Marchon and
people that really are not so well represented.
Well, we'll be returning to these issues anon. I'd like to share something that happened between CBS and the magazine The Opera Quarterly in connection with pirate records. Your calls, as always, are welcome here. Ralph and Tom Ferrandina, are there loose ends for the moment, or should we play something?
Yes, I have something on the machine already. This is, speaking of the last of the great divas, the duet from Chenier, the final duet with Carerras and Caballé.
I can't, my note is screwed up, so I mark French. But anyway, he asks that you talk about videos. He asks, do you just tape the Met from TV? And he says, had I known of pirates 30 or 40 years ago, I never would have bought commercials. Would you care to address that?
Well, about videos, I really don't want to talk about videos now because it's just a whole nother thing right now, and I'd really rather just talk about, the records. And if he knew about us 30 years ago, I didn't...
Yeah, if he knew about you 30 years ago, he quite simply wouldn't have bought commercial records because of his preference for pirates.
Mm-hmm.
It's never too late. You can buy them now.
Well, you can buy them all now.
I expect that he is. Or there's something technical here.
There's, 30 years ago, I was just a mere kid.
Why is this? Truth Must Be Served, Ed Rosenov, Lyric Distribution, HRE, Edizione Lirica, Impresario Edition. The same people who sued me sued the Ferrandina brothers. Jessye Norman got hold of Ralph's tape catalog. Then she got hold of our record of her. The article in the paper, I don't know which paper that was, mentioned the tape way before the record was brought into the picture. He's speaking of his conglomerate there, we never paid Tower's legal expenses. We sell Ralph's and Tom's records. We got 30 orders for them through the mail today. Sometimes we've been sued on the same day. And Ralph and I have discussed it on the phone that day. We each had to pay the Met about $1,000 about 3 years ago. True or false?
Well, the question was, did Jessye Norman sue Legendary Recordings? And Ed, as well as myself, and as well as you know, Stefan, that never did take place because she's not represented on Legendary nor upon Panos's recording.
Okay, Ed says that there's a legal nicety here. Okay, the case may not have had an index number, but you were served with some papers.
Never.
No?
Never Legendary Recordings. Never sued by the Met. Never sued by Jessye Norman.
Did you ever have to pay them the meta settlement?
Never. Legendary nor Panos's recordings, never. Ed knows that.
Further comments?
Although we do share some of the same problems, he's right about that. But
what are those problems?
Of being sometimes, you'll get some artists that are distressed, not happy with the product and would like to have it taken off.
Why are they unhappy?
Well, they feel that they're not, best represented. But we're talking about maybe, about 0.5%.
Do examples come to mind?
Well, Tozzi and.
Well, we haven't made anything.
I haven't made anything with it. For some reason, we always kind of knew, the people who are, to avoid and sometimes I'm sure other companies have put people out that they thought they would not have trouble with, and they did have trouble with. So it's sometimes like a trial and error thing.
I mean, mostly when you talk about I think when people think suit, that means going before a court and a judge hammering away and you getting up there with handcuffs and paying. Going to heavy litigation. I mean, that has never happened to either him or myself, because it's usually handled out of court, and the only ones that get a few bucks are the lawyers, and usually everyone laughs and goes home and has a big fat lunch.
Which artists favor you? Which artists are against you?
Well, I don't really know any who. I guess the only one that would be against me if I put out something on records would be Jessye Norman, but I, like I said, haven't put anything out on records with her. She was represented in my catalog of tapes, but as you all know, out there, Jessye Norman has a repertoire as many toes as I have on my right foot. What does she sing? The 4 last songs 100 times, and a few operas. And I'm really not such an admirer of hers, although I know she's very popular and makes tons of records and probably tons of money. But she's really not someone that I would want to put anything out by.
Yeah.
Don't you agree? She's not very popular, but what's popular doesn't mean very good in my estimation.
I've not listened to her that much, in part because I don't think she's ever given me catharsis, and that's one of the reasons I go.
Yeah, I just like people that turn me on, and there's many people there's other artists that I won't mention that are great stars and that are really very good and will go down in history as great singers, and I just don't like them.
What is that chunk of
now we're
vinyl on
going to
the
hear
turntable there?
something else, a chunk of Bohème excerpts with Björling and Tebaldi, and this was taken from a live TV show, and this was from 1956, and it's the Act 1 duet and the 2 arias from Bohème with Tebaldi and Björling. Artist, and I'm trying to play just my very favorite artist, and I don't think we have enough time. I think I should come back for 20 more shows.
Yes, you're invited for sure. You and your brother Tom.
I brought enough records here to play for another 2 years, I think.
Well, actually, this brings up something. I had believed that this show would be preempted on December 28th, 2 weeks from tonight. However, I've learned this evening that it will not be. Thank you for the Rysanek album. It was a thrill. One of the San Francisco Grand Dames was present at Rysanek performance there. I attended. This woman had studied with Godsky and said Rysanek's Zenta, that was the performance they attended, was the greatest since Godsky. And he asks, what of Marilyn Misc? Do you have any plans to put out a record with her?
We don't have any plans, but I have many tapes of hers in my Mr. Tape catalog. Any artist that you could ever think of in the last 50 years is represented by almost everything they ever sang in my Mr. Tape catalog. But on the records, we don't have anything right now with Marilyn Misc. Unfortunately, I do like her.
Jeff Riggs called to ask the date of the Caballé Carerras Chenier.
Okay, that was from
Earlier.
I think, let me see, that from 1979, from a Paris concert. That's not from a complete performance, it's from a concert, which is on our record LR 104, and we have a complete Chenier with Carerras and Caballé.
Rydell Cranster, what number is that?
LR 118.
Rydell Cranster called to say, I have a Simeonato record on Legendary Recordings from April 1959. Was the Aida duet with Vickers taken from the radio? Who was the announcer?
I believe that was from TV, and I forget the announcer. It just escapes me. I think it was about telephone. Who used to do that stuff?
I'm not sure.
I forgot who it is, but it's someone I should know, but I forgot.
Mr. Cranster further asked, is the record Divas in Unlikely Roles on Legendary Recordings?
Right, it's called Unfamiliar Divas it's called Familiar Divas in Unfamiliar Repertoire. It's one of our biggest hits. We can't keep it in stock. He already sold so many.
He asks comment on it and the subject.
Excuse me again?
He asks comment on it.
Okay, now these are the records that I personally like to do the most. And that one is, I have it here. I wanted to play something from it. It consists of 12 famous divas singing repertoire that they're not familiar with. One of the rarest things on it is Licia Albanese singing her only performance ever as Aida. And other singers on it is Caballé doing the Marschallin, Regina Resnick, Ernani and Volome, the Mira aria with Ziani, Sills doing O Patria Mia from Aida, and some other things I'm not going to say right now because I may play them later in my quiz.
Do you have Milanov on disc? Is she too campy to be taken seriously? No. Is that why there aren't more pirates of her?
I'll tell you, I think she's one of my favorites. She's in my top 10. I think it's because everything she ever sang, she recorded, except for a few things. And I have her on a duet record with Delmonico. She sings one of the duets.
She recorded everything commercially.
Commercially, yeah. I mean, her Aidas, her Forzas, her Giocondas, her Toscas, all her great roles she recorded commercially and in good voice. So I would like to put out maybe something in the future on Parnassus. But right now, I will eventually in a year or so.
Alan Herman declared, I've seen Grace Bumbry cringe at the sight of her pirates. And I've heard that Leontine Price is unhappy about them.
Well, I can't talk about Leontine, but
you've not
I hear from Grace all the time.
I
mean, she's a guest in my home, and so that's just sheer folly because she would call me before she would make a comment on that.
And we would never put out anything without her knowing it.
And she's a singer that I respect so much, and I must say something about Grace Bumbry is because people could say things about singers, and this is right from me, and it's the truth. She's one of the most professional singers, and as far as a person, so straightforward and honest, and she's just very professional to deal with, and she's been always a lot of fun to be with.
Tom Ferrandina, I believe you told me on the phone earlier today that you put out the Bumbry Nabucco in part as a tribute to her.
Yeah,
right.
We wanted something.
Come close.
We wanted something, featuring Grace because she's a very good friend of Ralph and has been a good customer of Ralph's for many, many years, even before, Legendary Recordings existed. So it was kind of something we did want to put out with her. Although we had the Requiem with her and Corelli, we wanted to put the opera with.
And we also put at the end of that, we have a free side, which we put a couple of rare arias with her, and we have her in some other featured records.
And she's featured on the Unufer also.
And she's on some of those. She's on our Unufer recording, which is she's tremendous.
That doesn't sell, does it?
It's because of the opera. That opera doesn't sell, and we just put it out because we knew it would not be a great seller because of what it is. But it's one of the better things we put out as far as my personal opinion of a work.
It's with Olivero
and Bumbry. The sound is superb on it.
I have experienced that here too. Some would like me to play Russian opera, but there just doesn't seem to be a listenership for
if you
Slavic.
That would be something. If you ever have, you can play it. I mean, I will give you a copy if you ever want to.
Thank you. Rysanek, according to Alan Herman, is underrepresented on disc. Will you do more?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, we love her. And
what do you have in the works?
We just did the Salome last year, complete with her. And we have this record, which is a 2-record tribute set. Yeah, and we're going to do another tribute set. And as I said, she's a very, very nice person. And her husband has just been very nice to me. And if there's anything I could do with them, I'll do it in the future. I'm just gathering up some rare things with her to put another record out.
Okay, Bill Peter called to say Legendary Recordings in Parnassus were not sued by Jessye Norman. However, Mr. Tape, Ralph Ferrandina, was. He was also sued by the Met because of videotapes. When a demand is made for money, you are being sued. The papers are on file with the courts.
I really don't wish to comment on that any further, and we're here to play music and not talk about this nonsense.
Right. Ed Rosen called with similar observations, adding Ralph should be more outspoken.
Yes, I think I should. There was one comment that you made before that wasn't so accurate. You said something about Tozzi being sued by...
the Tozzi sued...
MRF record?
Tower over an MRF.
It wasn't over an MRF record. It was over an HRE record.
It may have been over both, but I don't know the title of the HRE. Do you?
So I'll be a little bit outspoken about that. Now, what should we play now?
Well, all right, a few more remarks. I've been mentioning that I have a magazine forthcoming, Opera Fanatic, a quarterly to be... Rosen is doing much less with his labels.
Well, he's having the same problem, too.
You and Volce are the two labels that are most active at this time.
Right,
How come you're successful?
In the recording, with making records, yes, because we focus all our attention on that, where other companies get into videos and other things. We concentrate on records.
Okay, I'll clarify that a little bit. We basically just make tapes and basically make records. And I think we're the only company, as far as myself, I've been doing this Mr. Tape thing for now. It's a long time. And I think I'm the only company that has never changed their address, their logo, their name, in all these years. I mean, there are many other companies that just keep changing names and boxes and places, and it's just so hard keeping track of all that. And, we just keep basically our same name and our same address.
And there are other companies who put out things that they want to give the public the impression that they're European when they're actually made and pressed in this country.
Right, you're speaking about a label called Edizione Lirica.
I don't know which one. We don't know which one,
but that is done, and it's been done quite often lately.
MRF has kept the same name and for more than 10 years the same
MRF has,
there are some companies that
BJR and has been stable,
but there are other ones that have changed their names all the time. And as most people know, we have been the leaders in live recording, and we are the leaders, and we put out the best product, and we're here to stay, and we don't chase anyone, and no one chases us. They know where to find us, and we don't change our address.
The Ferrandina brothers have just declared touche. Seth Winter called to say Bill...
As Colin says, she had no rivals, and we don't either.
Seth Winter called... He's Bill Violi's pitcher.
He transfers Bill Violi's tape. Seth Winter?
Yes.
Yes, I know him.
Tell I don't know him.
I don't know him very well. I just know that he has transferred many of Bill Violi's tapes on OESI. I know he's done the Trovatore, he's done the Gorin, he's done the Slezak in Italian, he's done the Tenor Potpourri, some of the latter numbers.
I'm not sure.
I don't know him personally, I just know he has done some of the audio work.
OESI today sounds vastly better than it used to, than the earlier releases.
Has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, the transfers are a lot are not particularly phony. I've taken issue here strongly with Fanatic and Wimble's transfers as unduly gimmicked. And I think the OSI transfers today are
I think he has the best 78 transfers. Compared to Prizer and Rubini, I think OSI does have the best.
Anyway, he called to say Bill Violi had a heart seizure this week and is in the hospital, adding, I've not heard how he's doing, but I don't know when his new releases will come out.
He's doing fine, and his Slazak came out a couple of weeks ago. He's coming out with a very rare Björling, and he's putting out the Faust that was once available on Club 99. I'm not sure of the cast right now, but it was a very rare performance.
We played it here a few weeks ago to some
that is
acclaim.
coming out
also,
on the OSI label.
I'd like to say something else. It's just that, Bill has been such a helpful guy, one of the nicest guys in the business. Also, MRF Records and Voce have been so nice, and we get along with Voce and MRF and Bill Violi and Club 99, and my brother handles some other records, and
German News too.
And German News.
You're currently the distributor for a number of labels, pirate and non-pirate.
Right, including your own. We didn't even mention that, which I think we're close to 1,000 now that we sold of your record.
I have to say that I've been dealing with the Ferrandinas among a number of distributors for more than 4 years. Their fulfillment is the best in the business. That is to say, when I order a record on Monday, if I order it before UPS comes to them, I get it on Tuesday. They pay within 90 days, as agreed, and I've not had the least quarrel ever with any of their business practices. I wish that I could say that of many of my experiences in the record world. Gentlemen, along those lines, Legendary Recordings is a corporation.
Right, we're a corporation. We started the business as a corporation.
Therefore, you're subject to IRS scrutiny,
federal and state laws,
reporting,
right, as well as Mr. Tape also is incorporated.
And Panarsis.
Presumably, you pay taxes.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Seth Winner.
My fiscal year was just over.
Seth Winner, condolences.
Well, I would like to say one more thing. Thank you for those comments about how prompt we are, but I also have to say how prompt you are, because you hand deliver your records and we get them in within 2 hours sometimes. And
so this
week already we had to call you 3 times and you ran right down with, I think 40 records of yours that we needed this week. So
the height of the season. Now, Seth Winner added, the Björling album will have part of the Pagliacci prologue, unaccompanied, with Björling singing the baritone part from a party.
That could be. I don't know the exact context.
We didn't know the exact, because then Bill had gotten a heart attack the next day after he was discussing this with me. So,
Mr. Winner also said that the Björling album will have many alternate takes, unpublished takes of standard
arias. It will
arias.
be the sole distributor of that.
Now, Scott Marsh called to say, I ordered hundreds of dollars of merchandise from Legendary Recordings. I asked them to put out the Petrella Adriana. I received back a vitriolic letter. They insulted me and cut me off from their mailing list. Why are their records in the Tower Annex? The Corelli Don Carlo is abominable. No, Leyla Gencer is out on that label. They don't like her. He asks, don't they like her? Let me reply to Scott. All I can say is, I sell my company, Bel Canto Society, and the other company, AFBC Records. We're not pirates, but like Tower, like Dalton, like most record stores catering to the opera trade today, we're mail order. We do carry pirates. We carry just about all pirates. There's great demand for them. You can find them on display in the stores. Legendary sells the records that I produce, some of them, those on my label, and some others. And I sell their labels and some labels that they distribute.
Stefan?
Yes?
I know this fellow that you're speaking of, and he's known in the business as being a troublemaker. He's never satisfied. He's not only known on my list, he's known on other competitors' list. And he's just a person who will nitpick and complain and wonder why one 2-bit singer wasn't put on my label and neglect the hundreds that are.
What did he do?
No, I just know the name, and he was taken off my list because he was consistently annoying.
And because we don't keep anyone on our list who doesn't buy.
We ask anyone just to spend $8 a year. What is $8 a year to stay on an active mailing list that you're getting 6 to 7 mailings a year?
Which costs about $3 in postage.
And many other of my competitors told me to be careful of him because he's just a nitpicking troublemaker.
Well, in short, if you have a customer you think is a headache, you prefer not to do business.
I would refund their money or just, oof.
Right. I mean, they're so far in between because
I think he is the only one for almost 7 years now. And I know the name, Scott Marsh. I know it.
About Leyla Gencer, not to put down anyone, I mean, she was so, she's just not a singer that I really admire that much. And comparing her to Zayani, not that, they did similar repertoire but different repertoire also, it's really like comparing champagne and Coca-Cola.
In Scott Marsh's defense, I found him articulate and perceptive about opera. He's never been my customer, so I don't have experience with him that way.
But I know, but if someone wants you to put out something by Leyla Gencer, I never got even a request of hers to put something on records, and her tapes that I have don't sell well. I personally don't really like her that much, and why put out a record that I would be maybe sell 10 copies of?
Well, what we play?
Okay, now we didn't get anything queued up, but I want you to play my favorite tenor in the past. My favorite tenor
and our best-selling record
is Franco Corelli, who's great, and I would like you to play.
However, called in to take issue with you, Tom Ferrandina, declaring, I've done business with Scott Marsh for 8 years. He's cordial, credible, upstanding, a good customer. He buys autographs, rugs, many things from me.
Well, as far as the record business, 3 or 4 of my competitors have always warned me if Scott Marsh was on my mailing list to take him off. And that's no further comment.
Do you want to name the competitors?
No.
Jonathan Brown called to declare Absolute Sound observed that digital, the magazine Absolute Sound, that digital doesn't capture the overtones that distinguish a Stradivarius from an ordinary violin. There aren't enough bits to capture the nuances. CD is to analog as Burger King is to Lutece. Diana LaForge asked for how you buy legendary recordings as well as tapes from Mr. Tape. Is there a mail order address?
There is. For Mr. Tape, there is. It's Mr. Tape, P.O. Box 1.
Worth hearing. I finally understand Tibaldi was a hell of a singer, and for that she thanks Ralph and Tom Ferrandina and myself. John Hennig called in to ask about tapes from the Chesterfield Hour and the Ford Motor Program of such singers as Matzenauer.
I don't have any. I wish I did. Matzenauer?
There is Matzenauer was featured on the Voce 88, the Great Singers unpublished recordings.
Yeah, Phil Lavorsi said, don't Corelli's top notes sound like Pavarotti's, but didn't the critics say he hollered?
Sound like, I would say Corelli was in a class by himself, and that ends it.
Absolutely.
Edward Wynne declared an interesting program. Every opera fanatic likes pirates. BJR is the Cadillac of the pirate labels. However, I've been happy with Legendary Recordings' surfaces, sound, and service. And I'm particularly grateful for the dialogue of the Carmelites with Zayani.
Well, thank you. And we try our best, and as we said, the other companies do very good work, and BJR has been known to put out always such good sounding things.
What are we to listen to?
Now we're going to listen to something fun and
Peter Ransman, the Ransman, that is. The Ferrandinas are doing wonderfully well, but we need a ring cycle and more Wagner and Strauss. Also more Gwyneth Jones. Her studio recordings don't do her justice. Also more Freni on records.
Well, we feature the most on Gwyneth Jones as compared to any of the other companies. And as far as the ring cycle, there are many featured on Melodram. And with Wagner, we haven't been very successful with sales. We put a Tristan out, and it was very, very disappointing. So we're a bit leery. But with Gwyneth, we have many things.
I can't find
Requiem, the
a
Trovatore.
large listenership for Wagner on the radio.
I really wish there was, but there isn't.
Let's see. Eric Redmond called to take strong issue with Ralph Ferrandina. Ralph, you don't know your own address. The box for Mr. Tape, the box note must be the zip, surely, is 10016.
I think Ralph clarified
Right, I clarified that. Thanks, Eric, whoever you are.
Let's see. We got a call from Saul Drucker. He would like the names of the companies stated clearly. So if one of
Okay, it's Mr. Tape.
the recordings recital. At his best, Corelli was the best. He had his ups and downs, however. Russ Tyser declared Magda Olivero happily signed her pirate records at her Met debut.
And she has bought many from me, as well as received many promos from me. She loves them.
Now, we got a call from another competitor, Warren Lawrence, ultra fastidious about sound quality. I've had some dealings. He called in to say, well, I don't know the Ferrandina brothers personally, but they are to be congratulated on account of their comments and professionalism, and the records are in good sound.
Thank you.
I may never have heard, I've known Warren for years, I may never have heard him praise someone else's sound. No, I have heard it once or twice,
Well,
but
thank
it's
you.
unusual.
I did meet you. I think you used to work on Music Masters.
Oh, so I didn't know.
Years ago.
Yes.
I think I met you maybe 15 years ago, but you would not remember me. But thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I heard about your work.
The notorious Warren Lawrence. He's the one I described a few weeks back as capable of making himself invisible while he's taping. It's true. You look at him as you sing. I've had the experience many times, and you don't know he's there. You look at him, but when he's taping, somehow he fails to register on your consciousness. And even though he's a haunted man, I believe persona non grata at Carnegie Hall, because of this ability, he walks in and sits right in the first rows, and they don't see him. And he brings it back alive, the sound. It's incredible. If you ever need good tape, enough commercial. Anyway, John Hennig called to say Traubel's a delight. She didn't degrade herself a la Farrell in singing pop. Traubel uses her real voice, unlike Farrell with Mercer. Krista White called in to say the show's great. Legendary Recordings is the best private label. The Ferrandina brothers are great. Have them on again, Stefan. Well,
Thank you, Krista.
Yeah. Ralph, what do we play?
Okay, now, since we don't have too much time, we're playing two Christmas selections of the same O Holy Night. One is sung by Jussi Björling, followed by one by Franco Corelli.
Is dear to Stephen Leopold, and he wouldn't say that if he didn't mean it. Larry Danziger, more on your plans for Björling.
There is.
No comment on that.
It's all up in the air. We're planning something, and if we would, say it right now, someone else may get to it. But believe me, there will be things on with Björling on OASI, on Legendary, and on Voce within the next 6 to 8 months.
Larry Danziger, continuing, won't you do a Mario Lanza record?
Oh, never.
How come?
I just think it's there's so much available, and it's too commercial. It's
Jeffrey Riggs would like to know the Franco Corelli dates, the dates when he performed the Ferrandina brothers' choice of recordings represents the tastes of most of the listeners. Have them on again, Stefan. Listening to their Corelli album, one realizes how great he was, whatever the shortcomings. Honey Dodona, I'm enjoying the guests. I hope they come back. Honey Dodona of Greenwich, Connecticut. Ruth Gardner, question for Ralph and Tom Ferrandina. Why do some pirates use old Met recordings, but not others?
Well, everything we played here has not been from the Met, and I can't speak for the other people what they use.
I have the impression that, Ralph and Tom, you steer clear of putting out Met performances.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
There are some old labels that put out old things from the Met, but not us.
Seth Winner, he has a great source for the Tebaldi Björling recording without the azimuth problem. Also, he has Cigna and Martinelli masters, not what Eddie Smith put out, and many other things. He invites you to make use of his services. Alan Herman. Oh, Ruth Gardner says to you, Ralph and Tom Ferrandina, come back soon. Alan Herman. What do you make, Ralph and Tom, of the Deutsche Grammophon imminent release of Deutsche Grammophone's imminent release of a 1977 Frau ohne Schatten with Nielsen and Rysanek? What do you think of it when major labels put out live performance recordings?
Well, I guess they're doing something good. They must know it's a sure winner, so they would like to put it out. And they have good taste, maybe.
Ralph, you had announced Kirsten Flagstad at one point, but played some Kathleen Ferrier.
Right, the first one was Kathleen Ferrier, and then the second one was Flagstad. And now,
Stuart, let me get one last thing. Stuart Madville was kind enough to call to ask for ordering information regarding my forthcoming quarterly magazine. As some supposed Erna Berger, nor was it Carol Burnett, an intriguing misidentification. Oh, I don't think it's funny at all. I think it's actually astute. In any event, the first of the aforementioned champions gets the free records. He, along with the others, identified Anya Silja from the legendary recordings album of her, Silja, S-I-L-J-A. So what does Mr. Ransman win?
He wins 3 free records, both sent
to sit through this static opera, and the camera is terribly busy so that you don't get bored, and they throw all this visual opulence at you. Whereas this film doesn't seem to be in the least ashamed of giving you an opera. They just say, this is Tosca, this is the way it is, enjoy it. Plus, this film has a really great performance, Corelli's performance, which these other films, expensive as they may be, don't have. So it's perhaps more enjoyable, to my way of thinking, than the big super spectaculars we've been getting.
It's uncontrived. You have a feeling that you're very close to Franco. There are no gimmicks. It's not stage-bound, but the camera doesn't cut away. You don't see him singing with his lips closed.
Yeah, it's not apologizing for anything. It's not assuming that you will be bored. It's assuming that you are there because you want to see a good performance of Tosca.
And Caniglia, what do you make of her?
Caniglia, it was the last year, I think, that she sang. She hadn't made any records for more than 10 years, I think. And the soundtrack is extremely kind to her. You get the slancio and the experience and the padronanza di scena. How do you translate that?
The mastery of the stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But On the soundtrack, there's infinitely more velvet on those chords than one got in the theater at that time. So it's an exciting and rather flattering performance.
Some interesting people will be there, I've gotten. But I must be one of the few who greatly preferred Scotto after her switch to a heavier vocal style. In the 50s and 60s, she was a lovely lyric capable of an exquisite Mimi, Adina, and Butterfly. But her travels into upper range, for me, were excruciating. She was a very capable lyric, but she was not unique. I do agree that after the mid-70s, a persistent wobble appeared, and after 1980, a definite vocal decline was very apparent. But warts and all, she was such a beautiful Francesca. What soprano of today could carry that opera on her acting and the ability to create an aura on stage? Caballé? Hardly. Milo, Tommaso, Behrens, Vreni? They all have voices in decent shape, but are incapable of being a role on stage. I have a fear that we're reverting back to the old stand and sing style of acting. People like Dorothy Kirsten and Albanese could have given Caballé Tosca lessons. I love your magazine. It's true fun. To shed on Bellini's cancellations of Gioconda and Don Carlo, the part of Eboli at the Met. I remember years ago it was rumored that Corelli had throat cancer. Many details were forthcoming about his condition, all of which turned out to be true except for one thing. It wasn't Corelli, but Ettore Bastianini, so you never know. Mark French. I was pleased about Donald Bauer's appreciation of what Scotto has always tried to do. I read Donald Bauer's letter on Scotto during the last intermission. Scotto's always tried to be involved. People don't talk often of Dorothy Kirsten, also mentioned by Bowers, whose Fanciulla was marvelous. Donald Hennehan, long ago, should have disqualified himself from reviewing Scotto, Mark French continued. So obvious is Hennehan's prejudice. He always is the Times critic who covers her, and he vilifies her every time. Jonathan Brown has already written a letter about the situation here with the show.
At New York City Opera last season, the way that this is directed in that opera house is that Zegria, at the curtain right before they run off, he lunges for her and kisses not her lips or her face or anywhere at that level, but deep into the cleavage of her dress. And Faith Esham as Manoff pulled his head up by the hair and just gave him this long, deep look, and they both ran off together. And of course the place went into screams, and that was a small variation on what normally happens there, where he picks his head up of his own volition.
Screams of laughter?
No, not laughter. Just cheers of I don't know, auxiliary lust, I guess you call it.
Here on WKCR-FM in New York, 89.9 on the dial with...
No, I'm not. And in fact, I walked out of a performance he did of La Boheme at the Met, and only stayed for his Romeo and Juliet, his dedication to the opera, not what he was doing to it.
Mm-hmm. How come?
I just found him very coarse. And the voice itself is certainly a good voice, but what he does with it, he doesn't color. He's usually way too loud. And as an actor, I mean, the best description of him as an actor is after Romeo and Juliet, I walked into my office the next day, and my boss is an opera fan, and wanted to know how I liked the performance, and just from the expression on my face, he started going into a Fonzie imitation, which it completely summed up the way that I felt about the performance. I mean, he would have made a wonderful Tybalt, but Romeo, no. The first thing I think is that it sounds like Pavarotti, and then I think, well, it doesn't sound like Pavarotti quite. I know it's Carerras, because he has a lot of the same, I would imagine you'd say the tone or the color, but then he has a lot of the clean line of someone like a Domingo. I don't know whether it's Spanish training or whatever. He's a kind of hybrid of the two of them, so that I can't tell his voice right off the bat, but analyzing it, one tenor versus the other tenor, and combining them and settling on him, I can always recognize it after a moment or two.
No comments from you on Carerras, but comments on other things. Musical illiterate who doesn't even write well. We should form a society for the prevention of cruelty to Scotto. I love the magazine, Opera Fanatic. So spoke Clyde Allen. Fred Sabatini, the best radio opera program in New York. Carerras is a lusty tenor whose voice engenders excitement in the listener. His upper register flies back into the throat instead of remaining in the mask, but he's mastered all the little tenor tricks like spinning cohesive line and still offering us Zlancho and little Gigli-like emotional catch in the throat. One of the best of the contemporary tenors, long may he sing. On the subject of the Met, discussed earlier by Fred Sabatini, Barbara Travis added, the Met is not second-rate, but third-rate. I taped it every Saturday for years since they invented tape recording. Now I don't even tune it in. Well, almost no comment tonight on Jose Carerras. Did Anno put you to sleep? The number here surpassed Domingo, who was terrible on today's broadcast. With the right PR push, Carerras might even pass the Big P. On another topic, but they were bitterly disappointed. Ghastly. There were English subtitles without which you wouldn't have understood one word. But even with the subtitles, you didn't know what was going on. Pure gibberish. The music was not 12-tone, but conventional and mindless. So said Bob Connolly. On the same subject, Michael Redmond of the Newark Star-Ledger declared to me, too bad Midsummer Marriage is not in ancient Sumerian with no subtitles to ensure that you couldn't understand a word of the libretto. Would somebody ship Francesca Zambello, the stage director, to Dresden, where they like to do perverse and kinky things? So said Michael Redmond. Charlie Handelman declared, Franco Bonisoli was singing Trovatore in Vienna and stopped in the Piera at Madre Infelice Coro a Salvarti. He cried, Wasser, water. They booed. Somebody gave him water, and he sang the high C, O teco almeno. So reported Charlie Handelman. Ken Lane phoned, while Callas's very name recalls the renewed interest in and revitalization of bel canto repertoire, she was even more effective when, as here in Macbeth, she had a role capable of great drama. Her strong personality was a lightning rod to those who wished to antagonize her for newsworthy copy. But like her voice quality or not, she was a unique phenomenon capable of making even the familiar chestnuts come alive, so said Kenneth Lane. Wallace Cutler phoned this on an earlier show at the very end. The remark did not get read. Stefan, you don't leave a comma out. I hear the difference between Melchior and Rainer Goldberg, and I prefer Rainer Goldberg, at least on record. Melchior could bellow high notes so that they'd be heard at the back of the hall. His voice wasn't beautiful. I heard him hundreds of times. I thought Melchior a great singer until I heard Svanholm. Konya did a better Lohengrin than Melchior. Vickers was a better Siegmund than Melchior. Melchior had endurance and could be heard over the orchestra, but the voice was breathy and he bellowed on top. Many connoisseurs didn't think he was that great. Melchior had the in at the Met, however. The programs are interesting. So said Wallace Cutler. A letter here. Wait, it seems to have fallen out of its envelope. Well, here's one from George Friedman. My Kossoff of Whitestone. We're all opera insomniacs. Our wives and husbands deserve credit. I vote for Tucker because of his pronunciation, his dramatic singing, his phrasing. Why didn't Cerquetti have a career at the Met? None of us...
Perhaps she stopped singing before there was a chance. She really only sang, how long, 5, 6, 7 years?
A little longer, but not much.
No, I mean, the last thing that I know of her, there's a tape exists of a Nabucco from 1961 from Holland, and she's very bad. If that was the current state of her vocal condition, she had no choice but to stop singing, judging by that performance.
Jimmy Gladstone, Cerquetti is the greatest. Most of her repertory commercially, and those records are widely played. There's relatively little with her live, except from the Met, and for legal reasons we stay clear. Ed, did you have occasion to put Price out on records?
We had a few things. I believe we put out a Vienna Turandot from 61 with Nielsen de Stefano, where Price sings the Liu. And also, I think, a Don Giovanni with Karajan conducting from 1960, where Price is the Donna Anna. I believe that's also with Fritz Wunderlich, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, maybe one day we'll play those things.
Right. Stefan, if I just may say, one of the callers wanted the name of one cast member that she...
They certainly don't take the bloom off the voices with excessive rehearsal. Time and again, when I have been there, the performances have clearly not had stage or musical or orchestra rehearsals for some seasons. City Opera sometimes will rehearse the cast for the premiere, and then everyone has to fit in subsequent seasons and just find his or her way on stage. So you find the chorus lagging behind the beat, sometimes at some distance. The Met chorus, by the way, also lags behind the beat, and I think that's because of Stuyvesant and the way he picks choristers. Musicianship is not to the point volume of voice is. At City Opera, the problem is lack of rehearsal. Some of those choristers have never rehearsed their parts with orchestra. You find the singers groping their way, peering at conductors. It's one of the reasons I've criticized the company in the past. Neil Bickford of Brooklyn. Mihenes would be a good Maria in West Side Story, but certainly isn't a Salome. The Mephistopheles was passable, the Salome offensive. It's good that you compare the singers of the past, such as Tucker and Corelli, with today's. Mihenes Johnson has talent, but is a media creation like the Cano and Battle, pushed by Levine in the Man of Scotto for a few years. George Thompson was a better tenor than the four here. Less exciting than the Taines, but exquisite. Exquisite singing and sound. Di Stefano was a better Edgardo than Tucker. Pressed to choose between the four, Robert Lino picked Corelli for all his saying for all his faults he was exciting. Sutherland also has deplorable taste. Gino Mariani is a good guest. He knows about voices. Well, speaking of hatching plans, Gino and I are speaking about a number of things. Several guests will be involved in the upcoming Magda Olivero and Callis bashes, and Gino will play a particularly conspicuous part in La Scala 50 years ago, also upcoming. Dave Weinberg, what are Ed's views on Jan Peerce? What did Tucker have in the way of consistency and longevity that Peerce didn't?
A voice. No, I mean, I think anyone who saw the two at the Opera House, I'd say almost everybody, would agree that Tucker was a far more brilliant opera singer. Peerce might have been a bit more artistic, even a bit more musicianly than Tucker, although I think Tucker was more musicianly than any of the three other tenors in our little contest. Peerce became known to me before Tucker did, when I first began liking opera, when I was about 15. And he was my favorite tenor for a few years, until I heard Tucker on record, and then even more so till I heard Tucker live. I think Tucker was much more brilliant, had the clarion sound needed for the heroic roles that Peerce didn't have. Peerce sounded much better on records usually than he did in the house. And with Tucker, probably the opposite. You had to see him in person to really get the full impact and wallop of that voice.
Peerce did produce many ugly sounds, but I found him compelling emotionally. Jim Burgess, Michenis Johnson leaves me with mixed feelings, and he's going to write a letter about that, which I certainly look forward to. He's one of the more insightful listeners, surely. Ralph Latimer, we love Ed Rosen, too. He's the best co-host. Tucker turns me off with his staccato delivery. He's like Merrill. Who's doing the Tucker in Boston? Andy Gurian phoned to ask that Ed Rosen tell the Tosca details.
The performance was...
Two listeners here, yeah.